5. I need a Valiant.
Oh, yeah. All righty.
Give me a Valiant.
It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, July 27th, and we are here for the work session. Appreciate everybody in attendance. We've got a interesting agenda tonight, and we look forward to the things that may take place here tonight. Item number 2 is we do have a comment section, and these are for items that are not on the agenda. We will have opportunities for people to speak on agenda items as the time comes. So if anybody has anything to say that's not on the agenda, we'll be glad to listen to them at this moment. And seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is Flood Mitigation Program Report. Mr. Stuckey.
I want to just go over a few flood update items, and we're going to have a brief presentation for you on the hazard mitigation program and some of what we've learned in the last week or so about that program and how that will move forward. A couple things to just touch on, though, that have been of ongoing interest. We have approximately 44 properties that we've identified as potentially in the substantially damaged category. We've completed reviews of 33 of those, and at this point we would estimate that we have 10 that fit that substantially damaged category, all of which are residential properties. So we're continuing to work with those folks, both in terms of assessing that damage, assessing the relative value of the property, and doing that calculation related to the 50% of damage, and these may very well be some of the properties we're going to want to consider as we move into looking at the hazard mitigation program, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We do want to stress again that the deadline for application to FEMA is August 5th, and that is coming up shortly, so folks need to do that. If you don't register, you cannot be eligible for FEMA support and SBA loans, etc. And so just be aware of that, and if you have any question, we urge people to go ahead and get registered. There's no harm to doing that, and encourage them to do so. A little over a week ago, we attended a day-long meeting. I say we, I didn't make it, but David.
That was collective we.
Yeah, it's sort of collective we. But David and Tom Marsh and Gary Luffman and Todd Horton all attended a better part of a day with TEMA to go over the flood mitigation assistance programs that are available to us, and wanted to give you an overview of that and share with you on that. Before we do that, there's one other thing I wanted to mention to you to get you thinking about it that we're going to do some more research on. The legislature enacted the opportunity for local governments to do a proration of property tax for those severely affected by the flooding, specifically those that are out of their home for greater than a month, and that we would potentially be able to prorate their property taxes that they would pay in the year 2010, for the year 2010, based on that time that they're out of their home. So we are examining that. The county took some action to start that process earlier in the month, and so we're going to look into that and bring you some more information here probably at the next meeting to consider that and what that might mean. It would just be our portion that would be impacted. The county would be doing this as well. We would again need to have documentation that folks were substantially damaged and that they were out of their homes, and we're trying to work with the county to understand if they're using the FEMA definition of substantially damaged, or if they're using some other interpretation. So we're still trying to clarify what that means, but I wanted to get that out to you to start thinking about that is something that we've had some enabling legislation to provide for us to do, and we are exploring that, talking with the county, and looking at how this might work and what the financial implications might be. So if there are any questions on the basics, on the properties or on this program, be glad to take that, and then we'll go into the mitigation review.
My only comment was the one that you've already mentioned is substantial, the same thing as that other definition for substantial damage.
Yes.
Because that would mean that it wouldn't be available to most people.
Yeah, it would be a much smaller group, and so we'll just we're going to need to clarify that. That
Right.
specific term is in the resolution the county adopted, and I believe I'd seen that in some reference to the state action as well. So we're just going to have to clarify what that meaning is. So
Because
we'll
they're-
get through that, too.
There are definitely people that did not fit that category that are out of their homes, definitely still at this point.
So we'll look to how that's going to be interpreted and implemented and get back to you on that.
Are you comfortable in naming the specific 11 properties? Is that public record? You mentioned 11 properties that were
We've
10.
We've got 10 right now that we'd say are in that substantially damaged category. And we're continuing to work with those folks. You know, we had one drop-off, I think, recently with some other information that's come forward, and we just continue to work with those folks
Okay.
as we're going through that process.
One thing to keep in mind too is there are a couple of other properties that would probably fit that category that we are actually purchasing through the MacHatcher right-of-way acquisition process.
So you're not
that are
counting
in
those in the 10?
Yeah, we have 10 that are part of that project that's separate from the 10 we're talking about here.
Right. So that's completely separate properties because we had already started that process.
All right, we'll go ahead and talk through what we have at this point from TEMA on the hazard mitigation assistance programs, and take it away, David.
Well, one thing I want to clarify to begin with, we have been going to meetings, we've met with TEMA and FEMA representatives, also CORE and SBA, et cetera, several times. We'll try to answer any questions you may have. We're not experts. This is federal language. This is worse than lawyer language, Dana and Shauna. It's hard to follow, but we're learning a little bit, and so we should be able to answer some of your questions. The grant, start off with the programs that are available, and the FEMA program is administered through TEMA, which is Tennessee Emergency Management Association. They have it's a statewide situation. They have to make applications, et cetera. We work with them. There are two broad categories. There's disaster-related, which is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or HMGP. That's the one that we have been concentrating on the most. That's the one we'll probably be doing most of our efforts toward. The non-disaster are the other four: flood mitigation assistance, pre-disaster mitigation program, repetitive loss, or flood claims, and severe repetitive loss. Those you have to have a lot of documentation from previous activities, previous flooding, and things like that. And since we went to this, I've done some additional reading. It looks like the pre-disaster, which we thought we may be able to try to get into, is more geared towards smaller communities. So it's still a learning effort for us. But we are trying to get through this. As I said, the one that we're currently focusing on is the HMGP. The deadline for submission of that is typically 1 year after the date of the declaration. However, what we've been told is the deadline for what we'll be looking at is approximately 3 months after the final funding allocation is determined. The funding allocation for this particular event, the May flooding, is not expected to be determined until late December. So we'll probably have to make an application by March, sometime March or April, which is actually a little less than the declared disaster 1 year time frame. That program is a federal share of 75%, 25% local. The state has already indicated that the state will fund half of the local share, or 12.5%. So the city of Franklin would be required to do the other 12.5%. That can be in-kind services. It's not necessarily cash. We would have to spell out what those contributions are, et cetera. Another program we're considering is the FMA, or the Flood Mitigation Assistance. Its deadline is November 1st. It is a 75% to 90% federal share. What we would be looking at probably if we go into this is the 75%, 90% cuts in more to, again, the smaller communities. The pre-disaster mitigation program is also a deadline application of November 1st. It is, again, 75 and 90. Again, we think we're going to be eliminated from that due to the size of the city.
And I think the entire state will receive roughly $500,000 in total in that program.
Correct.
So it's not got a huge amount of money dedicated to it.
The hazard mitigation grant program they're looking at, as far as, it's determined based on how much money is spent for mitigation efforts that are being done now. So it is undecided, but they're expecting it to be quite a hefty sum. And they will be allocating that out to the different communities that are eligible for it. Just some additional notes, participation, and this is mostly on the hazard mitigation grant program. Participation by property owners for a buyout is a voluntary. We cannot do any condemnation. It has to be voluntary by the property owner. Now, if a property owner volunteers to go into the buyout program, they can back out of that up to the date of closing, or actually to the actual closing itself. They can come to closing and back out if they so choose. So it's a voluntary, and they have that option all the way up to the very end. The property owner, which we just found out last week actually, is not required to have flood insurance to participate in this program. We had been going under the assumption that you had to be in the flood insurance program or have the insurance to be able to participate, but that is, we have verified that 2 or 3 times now, that they do not have to have insurance. It has to, FEMA must approve the project prior to starting, and, you know, you can submit for projects that are already underway, and we'll give an example of that in a minute, but there's no guarantee that it will be included into the program. Purchase offer is based on the pre-flood fair market value. It's just the same thing we're doing on the Mac Hatcher properties that we're purchasing. We're going to a pre-flood, it would be a pre-flood appraisal, formal appraisal. And back to the, start the project, SBA has indicated that they're going to allow homeowners to use disaster assistance for the loan funds, favorable mortgage rate, to relocate. But you have, the property owners will have to enter into the, or apply for the SBA loan by August the 5th, just like the federal FEMA deadline. So, and if they do that, then, and they go into the purchase, go into the buyout program, then FEMA will reevaluate, and what would happen then is the loan itself would go to pay for the property. So we would get reimbursed, and then, of course, FEMA is also getting reimbursed. Deadline, again, for that SBA is August the 5th, and there's a contact there, 1-800-659-2955 for people to call SBA to get started on that. They do have the office still open at the other end of City Hall for people to talk to SBA.
Dave, do all of those 10 property owners know what you just told us?
We are going to be contacting all the property owners to let them know about that, and
Make sure that they're-
where they can do this. So,
That's a pretty tight time frame, isn't it?
yes, it is. For application.
Right, for application, I should
For
say.
application for that's the individual application to get started on the thing. Our application, of
Right,
course, is
right.
further down the road, but you know, and there's no guarantee that they will actually be included, but is a good bet that they'll be included. I mean, I hate to use that word, but that's basically what they're telling us, and this is some special thing the SBA has set up, evidently, so. And this, just wanted to sort of highlight the TEMA process for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. TEMA will receive the application from us. It has to be from an entity, a municipality, a county, or whatever. Individuals cannot apply for that. It would go through us. There's an initial review, a ranking, prepare and send to council. They have a council established within FEMA, or TEMA, I guess it is, that reviews all this. It goes to them, they'll either concur or non-concur, and then it's submitted to FEMA for FEMA review, and then, depending on FEMA's action, will either be awarded or rejected. We can reapply for it, or what am I trying to say?
Appeal.
Appeal the process at that point if we're not approved, or we can look at revisions to it. As you see on the slide, that is an average of 12 months. So if we submit an application in January 2011, we'll be looking at approximately 12 months, or January 2012, before we would be looking at getting an approval of our process, of our grant program. Once we get that, then we have 36 months to complete the process. The next two slides sort of go through the application of what we have to look at the time frame. We have been told we have 36 months to get this done, and that we want to use every day of it. So we will want to probably make our submissions similar to what's listed in this here. We have it outlined here as far as acquired properties. You see, that's a pretty tight time frame of just 7 months. Kind of different from when we go out to acquire, but remember, this is voluntary. They have to volunteer, they have to want to be acquired, so it makes that process a lot shorter. And then the second part of it is go through, and we, like I said, we have 36 months to complete it. There is the possibility of there being an extension to this time frame, but that would be through TEMA asking for it, et cetera. But again, they did indicate that we should always put in the maximum of 36 months. However we divide up the months for each category or each instance or each item in this, we need to use the whole 36 months. Whoa. We lost it.
You had one little
There
here,
it
there you
is.
go.
David, do we have to do any environmental testing?
It said for asbestos, didn't it?
We will have to do environmental compliances. We will have to look at what is required, and that's may or may not be testing. There is, we have to look at some of the NEPA process, et cetera, things like that. We have to look at historic structures.
What about subsurface stuff? Will we have to look at any of that?
Don't think so. That's, don't know for sure, but I don't think so. It's, unless we're going to be tearing out a basement or something, we may have to do something around where that is to see if we're causing any problems. The next steps we have is the City of Franklin. We are trying to schedule a meeting with TEMA in 2 to 3 weeks to discuss the project and begin the steps to prepare the application. I do want to point out that TEMA actually contacted us and wanted to set this meeting up to start the process. So that was kind of encouraging that they're out there, they're really going forward with it. And what we have found out from our consultant, FEMA Dave, that we've hired, that you'll probably recall, is that Tennessee, actually the hazard mitigation grants program in Tennessee, TEMA, is considered one of the best, if not the best, in Region 4 of EPA, so, or FEMA, I'm sorry. It's the same, almost same thing, but they're considered the best, so.
In fact, I got a call right before this meeting from the TEMA representative, and we've set our day to try to get together.
Oh, okay.
So, in a
And-
couple weeks.
Then the other thing is we're going to continue to build the list of possible acquisition projects and detail the assessments. And again, back to what we said earlier, communicate to these property owners, this process, what we can do, what the time frame, try to keep them informed all along the way of what's going on. I have also called the TEMA representatives today, because all we have been discussing in all of our meetings is residential. So I've called to ask the question, sent them an email of what about commercial? Haven't got an answer yet, but we'll be looking at commercial. We actually have one commercial piece of property has said that he may be interested in a buyout. So that's something that we want to consider as we go through this also. That's all the slides. Try to answer any
I
questions.
think a 5 or 6 commercial would be great for a buyout.
That's what item is that?
There's 5 or 6 he'd like to buy.
No, none of them are mine, none of them are mine. They're all on Hillsborough Road. Yeah.
First of all, please send this to us. Email this presentation to us. That's very good.
And we'll also get it out and get it on their webpage.
Good. Oh, that
We'll
would
put it
be
on our
also
flood
very good.
page, too.
My other one is just kind of a question. From what you're saying then, this would not be limited just to the 10 that we are talking about that has a substantial?
There's other issues, other things that we'll be looking at too. There's a buyout, there's the planning process, there's also projects that we can look at doing, actual projects as far as our stormwater issues, maybe detention, et cetera. Anything that would mitigate future events, keep us from having those type situations. And we can update our mitigation program with the planning process. So there will actually be, a couple of applications in this whole thing, so.
And there, at the end of it, there's an entire benefit cost analysis to all this that TEMA runs through to get the money from FEMA, and it all centers around long-term solutions to avoid, damage and mitigate specific risks going forward.
And I guess my other question that just occurred to me, then once this property is bought out, who holds title to it?
City of Franklin will hold title to it. We have to put restrictions on the property that it cannot be used for anything other than like open space. We could use it for parks, for trails, for activities such as that, but it will be City of Franklin owned. There is some abilities to give it to nonprofits, but there's more paperwork involved in that. So, and FEMA would have to approve all that. So it's basically putting it in a conservation easement.
Anything else?
Can I cover one more thing on flood that I wanted to mention? We've offered free building permits throughout this process to folks that are impacted by flood. And what I'd like to propose that we do, and actually I don't know that we need specific board action, but the blanket free building permit program, I'd like to draw a close to that by August 15th if I could, with the caveat that we will still, on a case-by-case basis, look at those situations and provide where it's clearly a flood-related issue and there's been timing issues in getting there, that same relief in terms of building permits, et cetera. But as a general program, we need to have a closure point at some point on the blanket program there, and I'd like to do that the middle of August, knowing that we'll continue to be mindful of that and look at each case as they come forward, and if they're clearly flood-related, we'll provide relief there. So.
Okay, item number 4, a report on the blue bag collections. Miss Becky is here.
I am here. We've had lots of fun these past 2 weeks. As you all know, we started our Blue Bag program on July 12th. It's been a great success. We've had lots of positive comments, and this is just a little sampling of what we've done in these first 2 weeks. Publix, Home Depot, Kroger, several other retailers in the area, Harper True Value. This is just a sampling of the displays they've put out, the stickers they wore to remind folks as they went through line, got your blue bags, ask about blue bags. We've had a lot of support from local retailers. Lots of places actually sold out and had trouble getting more inventory in. Buddy Blue Bag came to town.
Who is that blue man?
Buddy Blue Bag had lots of attention from the kids. And Buddy Blue Bag also had lots of attention from the adults.
We actually have 2.
Well, anybody can be a buddy. Anybody can be a blue bag buddy.
One forward, one go. One for the senior adults and one for the junior.
As long as they're tall enough for the costume, we're in business.
Blue bag buddy.
It's our own little version of the Blue Man Group here.
Yeah. I do have to give my mom
needs a little
credit. She
oxygen.
handmade the costume. Yeah. She actually made a tall one and a short one, so we have 2.
That guy on the left's pretty happy with those 2 ladies hugging him. I
Wonder, do you recognize any of
couldn't
those?
tell.
These are our drivers. These are the folks you'll see out in the field primarily. If they're on vacation or out on sick leave, you'll see someone else. But this is Jason Jones, Eddie Alaco, and Brent Reed. These are the folks we've charged with taking care of the recycling on the street. This is the first or second day we were out collecting. Rain or snow or sleet or shine, yeah, we're there. We had lots of participation. Lots of people participated. And then there were also lots of people who stockpiled and participated.
That's our champion. They were.
They've been saving up.
17 bags, is that right? 19 bags.
Well, that sure got a lot of stuff out of our landfill.
Well, I'll tell you what a lot of people called and said. I'll have several bags the first week.
Several?
And I've been saving up for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, and then, and then I'll participate after that as well. They were ready. They were excited about it.
I think that person gets a award. They probably cut our tipping fees way down.
Well, let's look at week 1. We recycled 35.33 tons. We had 23.5% participation, and we diverted 11% of our weekly residential collection from the landfill. Week 2, Week 2, we did drop a little bit, but we did expect it. And again, folks stockpiled, they saved up. We recycled 27.32 tons. We had participation of 22.7, and we diverted 8% of what we collected. And if you remember, early on, we said our original goal was that we wanted 15% of our population to participate. So we've really met that these first couple of weeks.
Do you have a diversion goal?
Diversion goal right now is between 20 or 25%. The state is getting ready to vote on making the statewide goal 20%.
Okay.
And right now, we're meeting that, or close to meeting that with this, as well as our wood chips that we divert and our yard bags that we divert to the compost site. Yes, sir.
At the risk of being a wet blanket, what diversion do we need to make this break even versus just take it all to landfill?
Originally, it was 15% of overall, of what we collected residentially
So we're
for
going to
this
need,
program.
data's not adequate to say, but
No.
we're going to need to keep stepping it up.
Yes.
Because you may remember, my concern about this whole thing was that it won't net enough diversion to break even.
Right.
And that if it didn't, it would be cheaper, although sad. It would be cheaper, but not morally superior, but cheaper to just keep taking it to the landfill.
And I agree with that.
So-
And that's why we hadn't
We need
introduced it.
to, and I'm pleased for the participation. We haven't been in town yet for a pickup, but we're going to participate. I'm glad for it, but just,
You're going to have the 19 bags out there.
no, because
It needs to be a status symbol.
You have a blue shirt on tonight, I appreciate that.
There's a garbage can and no blue bag.
I know. I'm ashamed to put my garbage can out there.
Just to say, for all 3 pickups, we have had half and half. I mean, it was the first time it's been like that, but this week, I went out yesterday morning, I guess that's when it was, and saw, just looking from my street, I saw 4 other blue bags there, So, and that was just in my sight, and the hill goes down there, so I thought that was pretty good. And then there may be people that don't have a whole one. I could see us, I thought, well, we probably won't have a whole one every time, but we have.
And there are some folks that don't have, some folks that are, if there's only one person living in a home, they may have 1 bag every 2 weeks. I'll tell you too, we've seen it in pockets. If you're participating, I got to call you and find out about it, or I got to start asking about and find out about this, and then the 3 or 4 houses around you participate.
Yeah.
And then the 4 or 5 houses around them participate. So we have seen that as a trend in subdivisions throughout the city.
And this week I gave a box of blue bags to my new move-in neighbor as a housewarming gift.
There you go.
they're watching to see if we put our blue bags.
The voter registration form.
I drive by my house, we take your blue bag.
And when we
Oh, yeah, I got blue bag.
when we start talking about dollars, we've saved right at about $2,200 based on the original figures of what it cost us to haul it to the landfill and get rid of it. And in a couple of weeks, I'll take that as success so far.
$2,200 a week?
No, that's for the-
$2,200 overall
Total
for the
for
2
the 2
weeks.
weeks.
Yes,
For
sir.
2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
You mean we paid $2,200 less in tipping fees?
Tipping fees, fuel, and labor.
Okay. But much like the conversation that I sometimes have about how the shoes were on sale, to get into this business, we spent a lot more than that.
We did spend money to get into this business. We
Okay.
did. Yes, sir.
Again, I don't want to be a wet blanket. I want it to work. That's why I'm telling people, I mean, anyone watching, if we're going to keep doing this, you got to get in.
That's right.
Okay? We can't keep doing it at 8%. It won't work.
It's got to be 15% or more on a regular basis. Anyone else?
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question, Ken?
Yes,
No,
sir.
I'd just make one comment, is that the trend is going to be that the tipping fees are going to continue to rise over time, and certainly that's the experience other places, and so that'll be one of our challenges.
And that's one of the factors that you look at and say, will it or won't it be effective, and will it or won't it make a difference?
Thanks, Becky. Okay, item number 5, consideration of resolution 2010-60, a resolution to authorize condemnation of rights-of-way and easements for the construction of the McHatcher Parkway extension improvements in the northwest quadrant.
You have this resolution and memo trying to explain what the resolution is for. I just want to add one comment concerning the reason we're coming to you now is we have actually one property owner that wants us to go in and start the condemnation. Could not do that before we did the resolution, so we're coming to you now for the resolution. It is a resolution that will cover the condemnation for all the properties, should we have to do that. As a typical resolution, we will not do that unless we absolutely have to, or they request it. And we will always continue to negotiate up to the point of final settlement.
I think we said it in the memo. It's a last resort, but this provides the blanket authorization to have that tool available to us, and something we need to keep the project moving.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, consideration of ordinance 2010-55, an ordinance to be entitled an ordinance to rezone 22.7 acres from low residential R1 to civic and institutional C1 for property located along Clovercroft Road and west of Bay Hill Circle, to establish a public hearing for August 10th, 2010. As you know, this is going to be on the voting session tonight. We've got the expedited program. Before we get started, I'm going to sort of lay out the majority of people that are here tonight are here for that particular reason, and kind of want to lay some parameters and some stuff out that so everybody knows kind of what's going on. First of all, we're going to let staff give their presentation. We will let Williamson County give a presentation, Board of Education, which they have. We will ask them the questions that we see fit at this point in time. After that, we will have some time left for some public input. I would ask for those people who wish to speak, this is not the official public input session that we might have on a voting session, which would be the second reading, which means that anybody can speak on that subject. What I would ask that you do is that you maybe pick one or two that are on one side or the other, and we're going to limit the public input to about 10 minutes or so. We do have other items on the agenda. We have a 7 o'clock board meeting we need to go to. But before we go on, I also want to say is that I want everybody to understand, not only us as Board of Mayor and Alderman, but those in the audience, what our charge is here. And it's very specific. Our charge is to decide whether or not this 22.7 acres should be zoned from residential to institutional. It is not our charge to decide whether or not Williamson County needs a new school, or if there should be another piece of property, let's pick which one it is, or it's not our decision to say how the county came about this particular piece of property or how many other pieces of property that were vetted. They're welcome to mention those things, but our charge is to look at this specific site and decide on the rezoning itself. I would also hazard a guess that there's not a single person in this room who doesn't understand that there needs to be a new school in the eastern part of Franklin, and everyone probably in this room understands that. So that's sort of a given, I guess, in, what do you call that in legal terms, when everybody agrees to that? There's a...
Stipulation.
We stipulate that, thank you. We stipulate that Williamson County Board of Education needs a new elementary school in the eastern part of Tennessee, eastern part of Franklin. We understand that. So what we are here to do, again, is to look purely at the zoning and what those implications are for our people in the east part of town and any other part of town. So, having said that,
Mr. Mayor?
yes?
I profusely apologize. Is there any way, can you just give me?
No, you will have to follow the procedures. Catherine, you go first.
Okay, as the mayor indicated, this is a request for rezoning from the Williamson County School District to rezone from R1, low-density residential, to C1, civic institutional. This is in support of the building construction of a 119,500 square foot elementary school in the Breezeway subdivision. That school will be approximately 33 feet in height and will cover 22.7 acres, or the school and its grounds will cover that amount of space. This is a situation that was taken up by our Plan Commission at their last meeting, and they voted to recommend disapproval of the rezoning. The rezoning simply takes into consideration the zoning. It doesn't take into consideration any of the elements regarding traffic, regarding many of the other issues that have been brought up. This is just, should this be rezoned from R1 to civic institutional in support of this particular project.
Kevin, you have a little presentation, I believe.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Stark. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we appreciate the
Slide that
time.
microphone over.
Oh, sorry. We appreciate the time you're giving us tonight to hear us. We made this brief presentation last week at the Planning Commission. Wanted to start out with our needs in the eastern part of the city of Franklin, and also Williamson County. It would serve children both in the city limits, and of course it would serve children, the school would serve children in the rural area or the county territories. We have looked at numerous sites. Again, this is primarily to relieve overcrowding at Trinity, and it could also impact some of our growth concerns that we have at Kenrose and other locations. As you know, we continue to grow. The city of Franklin has annexed a good part of this area east of Wilson Pike. The Breezeway subdivision happens to be one of those areas now within the annexed areas of the city of Franklin. There's also another subdivision that was approved by the county, which is Chardonnay, which is outside the city limits, but then right along with Breezeway on the same road on Clovercroft Road. We expect some 200 children from the Trinity School to be rezoned to the new school, giving Trinity the relief that it needs. The Clovercroft Road site is one that took nearly a full year to identify. We investigated 8 individual sites in this process. Location needed to be within a specific area within the radius of Trinity and Kenrose. The site selected was based on availability of utilities, future growth, and the location within our current transportation zone, and again, the ability to accommodate the proposed growth through the Breezeway subdivision, Chardonnay, and so forth. We did have a public meeting, and we listened to the citizen concerns at that public meeting, tried to address all of their questions, and we did turn in our responses for that public meeting. One of the biggest things that I can say is that a lot of issues were brought up about traffic safety. We don't think it's a traffic safety problem as far as the safety of the roads. There may be some intersections that have traffic signalization or turn lanes, that sort of thing, that may need to be addressed. The City of Franklin and the planning staff and the city engineering group, Mr. Boffman's office has requested specific Traffic studies, we received a letter dated the 22nd of July for those specific locations that they identified, and we can agree to provide those traffic studies. The Clovercroft area that we're trying to serve in the Trinity area, I think the main concern are those intersections, and I think we're in a position to where, working together with the city of Franklin and the school district, some of those traffic woes as far as signalization could be mitigated. We have our civil engineer here tonight to where if anybody's got any questions specific to the traffic studies that were done, only at our school site and Wilson, Pike, and McEwen, we'd be more than happy to address that. We looked at the number of buses that would be traveling McEwen. We currently have a total of 11 buses that travel McEwen. 4 carry students, the other 7 are in transit, or they are going from place to place to pick up students at other schools and so forth. So that's, in a nutshell, where we are. I do have a bit of a presentation to give you an idea of the site itself. We do think the site should be rezoned because of the fact that it's going to be accommodating a community that is both currently there on Clovercroft, 2 or 3 of them on Clovercroft. It'll also relieve some, or could be used for future growth further east on Clovercroft Road. What I can tell you right now is going back, this is a picture of the site itself, depicting where we plan on locating the building. It is on 22.7 acres, and the building would be approximately, we've got it slated for 118,200 square feet. However, with ancillary facilities that may have to occur, it could go up as high as 119,000, so we provided that maximum amount. Going to our next slide, this is the topo and boundary survey of the site. We have identified the slope areas on the site, and we do have construction drawings, and our submittal, it was included with this submittal for the actual construction documents. The next slide that we have is a conceptual layout of the building itself. The building itself is similar to the one that we have just completed over in the West Haven subdivision. Clovercroft Road, again, is this area right through here in front of the school. We're slated for 2 entrances in the front. One of them on the west side here is a school bus entrance, and it's restricted to school buses only. The next entrance aligns with Chardonnay right here, the entrance to Chardonnay. That entrance is for automobiles only. It provides a parent drop-off loop number 1 here. It also has a drop-off loop that continues to the back of the building. And because of some of the requests that we've had of late, we're looking at modifying this to add another one right here and some additional stacking in the very back to extend this out. The road back here would be an access for people that live in the Breezeway subdivision and also emergency vehicles. We're still open to discussions on those as far as exactly how that layout would take place. Again, we do believe that it's a proper area for a school because of the fact that, you know, the city has zoned it residential, and with the number of homes that are planned for that area and the number of homes that we have in the McKay's Mill area, without school sites set aside, we've got a need for a school, and we're trying to find the best site to accommodate that. Next slide, there's another look out. One area that I wanted to point out to all of you is this road right here is a permeable type block pavement type road, and that's for emergency vehicle to make a complete loop around the building, you know, all the way around 360 degrees. For all of you that's watching the screen back here, I'm speaking of this one right here. The next slide is our landscape buffer plan. We plan to conform with the buffering requirements within the design standards of the City of Franklin. The slide itself shows the actual layout of our landscape, or proposed landscaping. And we believe that we meet the requirements of the city of Franklin. There have been concerns that, is there enough trees across the front? Residents have expressed those concerns. We can accommodate whatever landscaping is necessary to, keep that area as wooded as it currently is. We've got a very large buffer going along this side right here that's extremely dense, and will minimize any existing disturbance of any existing trees here and this forested area back here. And again, we've got more of the buffer going in to protect those areas even better. The floor plan layout, it's the first floor. We recognize, in accordance with the state, that we have to restrict the first floor to, or restrict the second floor from kindergarten, first and second graders. So all of those children would be on the first floor, and then the upper grades would be on the second floor, as we're showing right here. This is an example of the exterior of the building, except for the cupola. I stated that earlier. That's just a nice, pretty rendering that the architects produced. I think if you look at the building that we've done at West Haven and also the Spring Hill area, you'll see that even without the cupola, it's a very attractive building. We would keep with the same color schemes as Perry Creek if there's, we've designed it that way to expedite this process, and we think it would still, again, blend in with the area. The other question that came up is the road issue. We have another slide presentation on a PowerPoint that maybe we have it here, to demonstrate some of the concerns of roadways. We did take some trips out just to get an idea of what kind of road conditions we really have within the city, within the county, and how those compared, and trying to address safety concerns of the roadways. Again, we feel the roadways are safe. We will say that there may be some traffic signalization that has to be investigated, and we're doing that through our traffic studies. This is Clovercroft at Bay Hill Circle, which is where the school would be located. You have an 11-foot travel lane from center line to white line and a 38-inch shoulder. This one is McEwen at Oxford Glen Drive. A similar situation. It is a little bit narrow. It's 10 foot, center line to white line, and an 18-inch shoulder. There is some more shoulder off to the side, and granted, that road on McEwen, as you all know, it does widen and narrow and so forth on the shoulders. The next slide that we've got is McEwen at Players Mill. I don't know if that went over right. And it's a 10'9" center line to shoulder, and a 24-inch shoulder. Let me see, are we? Thank you very much. Okay, that's McEwen at Players Mill. The next slide, we've got Wilson Pike and McEwen. Wilson Pike and McEwen, again, we're at 10'9" and a 50-inch shoulder, and then there's a little bit past the shoulder itself. Trinity Elementary School, located on Highway 96 East. We've got a 10'3" on a state highway, center line to the white line, a 43-inch asphalt shoulder, and then it's got a little bit of shoulder from that in various areas. And the one, another one that we have, am I getting ahead of you? Okay. All right. Page Middle School on Arno Road, that's a 10-foot, 5-inch center line to white line and a 40-inch shoulder. So I think, and to just summarize that part of it, I think that we can demonstrate that these roads are pretty similar throughout the city and throughout the county. And we have numerous buses, over 200 buses traveling those each day. And as I reported at our last meeting, we have a total of some 11,000 miles a day that we, or 12,000 miles each day that we drive. And last year we did have one accident. We don't like those, but the best way, in our opinion, for children to get back and forth is through the school bus. I'd like to introduce Jason Golden, who is our Chief Operating Officer. I think Jason has some comments that he would like to make in support of our request for the resolution to rezone this property to the civic institutional use.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and Board. And I also wanted to at least let you know, my title is COO and General Counsel. I'm a lawyer by trade, and as a lawyer, I can't ever resist first mentioning legal issues. I just can't resist it. And I will say that Mayor Schroer defined the question very well. It's a question of zoning or change in use. That's the legal question. And from a legal perspective, there's a case out of Rutherford County that actually defines this pretty well. And I'm sure your general counsel can speak to you about that. I did want to talk a little bit about some practical things that I think that we would like you to consider to impact your decision. I think the practical question that follows up on Mayor Schroer's legal description of the question of zoning is really the extent to which you all will participate with us. We came here because we want you to participate with us. We recognize that traffic is an issue. Traffic is an issue in any place where there's growth. That's what we've been living for the last 20 years. I don't know if you all know some of the details. I'm sure you've seen some county reports on the growth that we've experienced. We've experienced a growth 3 times our total population in the last 20 years of students. We're over 30,000 now. 20 years ago, we were at about 10. 10 years ago, we were at about 20. And so the growth continues. So as a practical matter, schools will follow growth, and so that's going to happen. I did want to talk about some things that we've looked at that have affected how we approach this since we initiated this discussion with your staff. And I want to give you some specific things that we've realized that we can work on as a result of the discussions we've had. Number one, the city has already asked for a traffic light, asked the state for a traffic light at McEwen and Wilson Pike. That submission was actually made before we even submitted our plans. We want to participate to the extent we can in helping the state come to the conclusion that that needs to be there. I'm no traffic expert, but it seems apparent that needs to be seriously considered. I will also tell you that from a financial standpoint, if we're able to hook onto sewer, that's going to save some money for us, and we can toss in some assistance financially if we can hook onto the sewer and participate in that way, because it's going to be less expensive for us, less expensive than building a plant. We also want to let you know that if we get a recommendation that we actually have a sidewalk across the front of the property that runs parallel to Clovercroft, we'll be willing to do that. I know that was something that's been mentioned. I also want to tell you that there has been some expression of a desire to place additional trees on the front side of the property. We're willing to discuss that, and I think Mr. Fortney mentioned a little bit of that to you earlier, that there has been some discussion of some additional trees. We're willing to add that on if that's the desire of the city planners. We also have talked about adding additional stacking of cars to the rear of the school, even over and above what we've planned here. And I will tell you that the stacking that we have proposed here is substantially more than we have done in our prior school buildings. And I think it's apparent that the trend is among families to drive their children to school. If you look at that 20-year window I'm talking about, I think it's pretty apparent that that's the case. So we're willing to add in additional stacking to alleviate some of that concern. And I will say one of the issues that we have had at Trinity on Highway 96 is the facility that we have, there are actually cars sitting out on Highway 96 right now waiting to turn in from parents who are coming to pick up their children. That's one of the many reasons that Trinity site is no longer viable for us. It's just become a practical impossibility. I also want to tell you that if there's going to be an addition of turn lanes at McEwen and Wilson, or Clovercroft and Wilson, we want to participate in that as well. Add to your adequate school facilities tax money that you've gotten over these last few years, and find a way to make those things work if they're feasible. We want to participate in that. And so those are the things that we have just noticed in the time that we've been studying this directly with city administration. I suspect there may be some other things that develop. I will tell you that we have agreed to do a number of traffic studies. We are planning on doing those traffic studies after school starts on August 12th, where school starts in about 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks. We recognize that when school's in session, traffic patterns are a little bit different from the summertime. Vacations are over, there are more people involved. I will also tell you something that was mentioned, but I want to emphasize it. Our school hours at elementary school is 8:30 to 3:30, generally, 8:35, 3:35, around there. So we come in on the tail end of the rush hour in the morning, and we leave before the rush hour in the evening. And we have a little bit of flexibility in the time. The way we do our buses, the high schools start at about 7:30, and then when the bus routes finish for the high schools, they go to serve the elementary schools. And so pushing the time back a little bit, it still has some feasibility to us if the traffic studies reveal that that's an issue. Now, when parents come to the building, if they're coming from the Franklin side of this site, they will be going basically against the flow of traffic that we typically see, and then they will come back out along with that flow. So the early part of them going to it will be against traffic. A few minutes later, they will be coming with traffic. On that point, there was a discussion at the Planning Commission meeting of the number of individuals who use Clovercroft from out of county or from far away as they pass through, cut through. There was also a discussion of the school zones. When we have a school zone, we put lights up, 20-mile-per-hour zone. We generally start those lights about a half hour before school starts. We turn those lights off about 15 minutes after school is scheduled to close in the morning. School is scheduled to open in the morning. We do the opposite in the afternoon. We turn it on about 15 minutes before and turn them off about 30 minutes after. There was discussion about the raceway that some people described it as that way on Clovercroft. Those lights are going to solve that problem. There's the potential there is that this may become more safe with those lights during school days because people are going to respect that. We also have law enforcement at some of our school sites. The presence of a law enforcement vehicle, even for a day or two, is going to affect how people drive that. I will also suggest to you that one possibility the traffic study may not reveal is that when cars start realizing they're going through a school zone and they're trying to cut through, what are they going to do? If it's slowing them down because they're going through a school zone, I would submit to you that they may very well be choosing some alternate route. And so there are some potential side benefits to a school being there if you're talking about traffic and if you're talking about safety. From our perspective, a school's going to come. When there's growth, schools come. It's inevitable. But I wanted you all to be aware that we do want to participate with you. If you tell us no, you're saying we're finished with you. It's a no. And so you would be telling us that you want to end your participation with us. We don't want that to happen. We want to continue to work with you. And given your plans, the fact that you all have already been asking the state for a traffic light, the fact that you have a Phase 4 and Phase 5 plan for McEwen tells us that you do have a longer-term plan that we can participate with you on. I do want to mention one little last thing about Trinity. Mayor Schroer mentioned that it's not your issue, but we are welcome to mention it. We have studied a lot of sites. I want to specifically mention Trinity. We've had some that we found in the floodplain that looked great until we saw the water. But at Trinity, I want to tell you a few things. We have an on-site water treatment facility there. It's too old to accommodate additional growth of another building there. The stacking that I talked about, we can't accommodate additional cars. The core part of the building, the gym, the cafeteria, those are already pressed beyond capacity. We've just reached a point at that site that we can't build. Another issue is even if all those things worked for us, the amount of construction that we could put on that site would only be a temporary fix because McKay's Mill is not built out. We're going to have schools to accommodate the capacity, the total capacity of two elementary schools in the next 5 years. And that's 800 per, or a total of 1,600. Increasing Trinity's capacity to deal with our current issues will not give us a long-term solution.
Anybody have questions? Comments, Pat?
I have a specific question,
Yeah.
what, something you just said. The water treatment septic system out there, have you looked, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask, I know this doesn't have to do with our rezoning issue, but I'm curious, since you brought that up. Did you look at, looking at that land near the power lines, near there, that the county owns, to put another system?
Are you talking about the power lines that are part of the county park directly behind the school system?
Because
Hey,
there's
Mr.
land there, and I'm wondering if did you look at putting another system there? Because what I've been told, and I know that land, that they had a large frontage area, there were, another building could have been built for 3, 4, and 5 grades.
Right.
And then the turning area and the roads areas that could come in there and drop off children and then come back. Because you're talking about stacking problems as
Right.
well. But I'm very interested in that land behind there that the county owns, and I'm also interested in that land on the left side that possibly could have been purchased to put up fix your problem.
Yeah, well, Mr. Forty can answer those questions specifically.
You brought that up, so I wanted
We
to...
looked at the land in back of the school where it's a low-lying area, part of it's in the floodplain. We've also got, we also have some soil conditions back there that indicate that we're also in a wetland area, not just floodplain, but wetland area. There is an issue with the state. The plant that we currently have is a recirculating sand filter, and the discharge for that plant is into the creek. That is no longer allowed under the terms of TDEC. There would have to be a substantial amount of land that would have to be available to be able to increase that wastewater treatment plant. We looked at how we could possibly access the back of the school from that land, and it was extremely challenging. The other problem that we had is our gymnasium, food service, and cafeteria are taxed to the maximum right now at Trinity, to the very max.
Well, if you built another building, you would add that into another building to service the next building, I would think.
Well, I will say, we looked at that possibility, given the amount of land. What we talked about was what you mentioned, the third, fourth, and fifth. The best we could do would be to have a multi-purpose room. Rather, we don't have the room for all those facilities. We would have to move the food back and forth to those particular.
In other words, if you built another building there, you wouldn't add a cafeteria in that building?
Right, we wouldn't have enough space. That's what.
Not enough
That's what we. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's our biggest issue, is
Yeah.
the land mass that's available, and also the floodplain, and then discharging into the creek. We also, if we expand that wastewater treatment plant, you have to have a secondary pond that's required, not only the first pond, but the secondary pond that's required by the county ordinance and by TDEC, which takes up several more acres.
Well, a couple other things. We're charged in this rezoning to look at certain things like sewer, water, traffic, safety, and those issues. And, I don't know what's going to happen here tonight, but I certainly would hope if that school does go there, that you would, we would have turn lanes. We'd have traffic light. We would have improved infrastructure in that area. To me, that is a given. It has to happen. There has to be sidewalks and lighting at street level. There has to be a crosswalk. Those things, to me, are just given. Whether we're participating with you or not, that has to be done in my book. I don't know how it cannot be. But when I'm looking at the issues of rezoning, I'm looking at traffic, sewer, water, infrastructure, and those issues, and safety. And this is some facts I want to share with everybody here, and things that I've been looking at. First of all, the city, and I want to go on record saying this because we talk about McEwen, and that's my area. But the city of Franklin has definitely spent a lot of money and time this past year improving McEwen Drive. We've resurfaced the drive, we've put in new bright reflectors, reflecting yellow and white lines on the street. We filled in some shoulders, we've additional guardrails, we've put caution arrows up to alert drivers on the upcoming curves. We've much improved the road. Second of all, you mentioned you currently carry 11 buses, you have 11 buses, 4 that currently carry students, correct?
That's correct.
And you would be adding 3 more to this school, for this school?
When the school maxed out, it would be a total of approximately 8 buses.
All right.
If I may, on that point, the 4 buses include some of the servicing to McKay's Mill. So
Yes.
we anticipate, because of the buses that are serving McKay's Mill right now, we will have 2 or 3 buses coming from the McKay's Mill area to this new site with students. Other buses will and I'm projecting where our zones look to be, other buses will still head south towards Trinity.
Okay. And then, of course, McEwen Road was a county road. It got annexed into the city, and we have strict road standards. And I know it doesn't meet our strict road standards, but it does meet state standards. And I did look, and I paid close attention before, when you were here Thursday night, and you have Duplex Road, and you have other roads and county roads that you put these school buses down, just like McEwen, that you do this every day. And I was aware of that. I want you to know I paid attention to that as well. And you also, Dr. Linney was talking to me the other day, and he said, I asked him specifically some questions, and he said that the bus drivers that drive down McEwen had no accidents, they've reported no safety issues, and they've not had problems maneuvering the curves as well. So took that into consideration as well. And then the traffic, we talked about the speeding, and you just addressed that, and you would have the lights up. So, yes, I know that would reduce the speeding, and it would reduce, actually, when the cars are going 15, what is the zone? 15 miles per hour in a school zone?
Varies from community. Franklin
Usually
area
it's
is
15.
generally 20
Or
miles
20.
an hour.
And that slows traffic way down, so if people are concerned about getting out, you wouldn't have people coming at 40 miles an hour, you'd have people coming at 15 or 20, so you could actually get out of the subdivisions. The turn lane to be added on Clovercroft and Wilson, and McEwen and Wilson, as well as the traffic light, as I said, just is a given. That has to happen if a school goes there. Then the sewer availability in the Mays Creek Basin was a concern to me for sufficient capacity, and for what I'm being told, what we know right now, we do have sufficient capacity, because during your school hours, you all will be using sewer at the off-peak hours of the community around it. Concerns of the people out on Clovercroft and Breezeway, they said they're concerned if they're not out there by 7 o'clock, they don't get out. But as you said again, school starts at 8:30, the first bus arrives around, 8 o'clock?
That's correct.
And then your school lets out at 3:30, and they're well gone by the time of rush hour later in the day.
Generally gone by 3:45 to 10 minutes to 4.
I felt like this PEG thing, where somebody hits the PEG and another one pops up, all the last 3 or 4 days, because there's one issue and then another issue pops up, another issue gets addressed, and another issue pops up, and it's just this merry-go-round of issues. And as John said, no one's denying that there's a school that's needed in this area. I, for one, know that very well. I don't think anybody understands that any better than this board, because we do pay attention to these issues. But I really feel that, this is an area where we don't have infrastructure. There were, to me, no plans to really zone that area out there into the city. And that area got zoned way before any of these people sat on this board, maybe with the exception of one person here. And so, the infrastructure, the infrastructure, has not been pushed as hard as it probably should have been in the past. And I understand there are people that made decisions before you all got on board, and there's decisions that have been made before we all got on board as well. So this is very intriguing issue before us for the zoning. But we have to just stick with this land and decide if this land truly should be rezoned.
If I may, in response to that, it is interesting when you look at the city limits, there's actually some land that is west of us that's not in the city limits, back towards Franklin, that's not in the city limits on the north side of the road. And of course, the south side of the road, and I'm speaking about Clovercroft, just due south of us is not in the city limits either. So, we are very close to the extreme southeastern limits of the city at that particular point. Of course, Breezeway is in the city limits.
Glad you had a comment.
Yeah, I would just like to hear Dave or Eric just a little on the store capacity, because I think that came up at the planning commission, it's come up here, and just address that. I know from a plant standpoint, we have that, but from a pump piping standpoint, do we have the capacity?
Let me comment first, and Mark or David can also add to this. We're still working through all of the details of it, but the preliminary read is that there is sufficient capacity to work with it, and what Alderman Berger referred to is accurate, that it's sort of an off-peak use. The peak that we get from residential users early in the morning is dropping at the time the school would start in session, and that use would kick in, and then it's out of session before we start to see the evening rise as well. So that's what we're seeing at this point, but we're still asking questions and looking at all those issues to make sure we've done our due diligence, but that's the initial read, and I'll let Mark or Dave speak up as well.
You can talk to the podium if you want to.
You can go to the podium.
Well, as we had discussed earlier today, at this point, we're still going through the information that we have on. There's actually 3 pump stations that are affected, going through those, making sure they'll be able to accommodate the additional flows. At this point, we don't have a definitive, but as Eric said, the preliminary looks to be positive.
No, it's,
Mayor.
we just got to
Yeah.
confirm the actual capacity.
Mr. Golden, it's good to see you outside of where we usually used to meet.
You too.
I think you addressed this in an exceedingly diplomatic fashion, but I want to make sure that I understand what you were telling us. As I understood, or maybe I read too much into it, but it sounded to me like you told us, if we say no, then you're just going to carry on and thank us for our comments and go and do what you're going to do. Now, I don't mean to say that in an abrasive or confrontational way, but it sounds to me like you're committed to this site and this school, and that you're really sort of here to invite us to participate rather than ask us for permission.
Dr. Looney at the public meeting said we are committed to this site, and we are committed to this site. And I'm not your attorney again, and of course you know that, and you know why I have to say it. There is a case out of Rutherford County where there's actually a dispute between the Board of Education and the county, their funding body, and these questions have been answered. But I will tell you, we're coming here for a reason, because we genuinely want to work with you. We recognize there's a need. Dr. Looney has a view of how government serves families and individuals that's a little more broad than the standard silo approach. And that's why...
Well, for that, I think you ought to be commended, because I don't remember ever participating in a meeting quite like this. I've gone to county commission meetings, I've gone to school board meetings, but that was as citizen McClendon at best, maybe. So I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're prepared to have this dialogue with us. And so I think it's a lot more productive that we do that.
Margaret? Oh, wait, Dr. Lundy,
I felt kind of odd for Jason talking for me. And so, excuse me, I'd just like to,
y'all look like you're dancing there for a minute.
I'm not very good at that, so it wouldn't be a pretty sight. I'd like to reiterate what Jason Golden said, and that is,
we are committed to this site, but we also come with our hat in hand. We feel like it's in this community's best interest to partner with the city that's affected by this process. I think we have an opportunity tonight to build synergy that maybe we haven't had before. We can use the resources that we have for school construction. You could potentially use some resources that you have. It's been suggested that you use the adequate facilities school tax. Whatever resources you use would be up to you, obviously, but we can pool those resources and our collective commitment and ability to collaborate with state government to have some of these issues resolved so that we're not always chasing our tail building a school after a development comes in place. And so I really am respectfully asking you to not pull away from the table tonight. The school is going to go there. We don't want to take polarized positions from you. We would rather partner with you and everybody else that we can along the way to not only make sure that the school is there to serve the boys and girls, but that the infrastructure is there to advance the growth of the city of Franklin and the county. Thank you.
Margaret.
My heart aches for those little children running around out there in the
Will you tell everybody that you're a retired
Well,
second grade school teacher, and they are in the second grade?
That's where my heart is.
Okay.
That's where my heart is. On the other hand, since the Williamson County School Board has the opportunity to set aside land in large developments as a future school site and chooses not to plan ahead, which is what's happened in the past, because this came up when McKay's Mill was developed. It was suggested that by the city that be one of the requirements for their approval, that they set aside land, and the school board said they didn't want it, they didn't need it, that they had Trinity and wherever else their children went to school. It's my understanding that the same thing happened in Sullivan Farms and even West Haven. But West Haven went right ahead and built their school. I mean, they went right ahead and set aside the land. They didn't build it, you built it. They set aside the land, therefore they were prepared for that. They knew it was going to be. But I do not feel that it is justifiable for the school board to shoot from the hip and decide on a location that is as precarious as this one is, in the middle of a subdivision that was not planned for this kind of activity. And whether it's the road or the neighbors, whatever it is, they did not expect this. And I just think that with all the land in that area, that surely there are parcels that could be available and would be more appropriate. And that's all I have to say about rezoning.
I've got a few questions and maybe some comments, but the first one, I don't think I completely understood how many cars can be stacked at the proposed school and what the additional stacking number would be with this added space. Did you address that and I just missed it?
Yeah, we have been asked to look at our stacking. Right now, we have 3,000 lineal feet of stacking. That'll accommodate 100, let me defer for a moment. 150? 150. We'd like to get enough. We've asked our engineers to look at that and get additional stacking to add to that.
And then, this is another question I had, is that in the documentation we were given, it describes the land use plan recommendations, and the last sentence in that discusses proposed institutional uses should mitigate traffic impacts through traffic impact analysis and design to maintain or improve current levels of service. I guess I'd like some additional explanation and expand on that just a little bit. And while you're thinking about that, I think one of my concerns, the common theme is that we're still working through the details. I've heard that a lot of times. We're still working through the details on how many cars we can stack there. We're still working through the details of a sidewalk. We're still working through the details of a turn lane or a red light, or whether we have sewer. And that really concerns me right now, that we're trying to push this project through in a very fast timeline, but we have more questions that arise every single day rather than less, and we're not getting any answers, or not, the answers are not coming as fast as the questions are coming. And so that's a big concern to me, that, I think if it were anybody else that were coming to us and said, well, we're wanting to put a facility here, and they didn't have the answers, we would probably tell them, well, come back when you have the answers. So I'd like to hear about that proposed institutional use.
The proposed institutional use in that particular...
What does that mean exactly? What do we tell the school board that means?
What we would tell the school board that means is that we would like to see mitigation of some of the traffic conditions that surround the school site. This is the reason why we've asked for additional traffic analyzations of those sites and additional traffic studies so that we can see what mitigation needs to be done. The school site should leave better roads in that immediate area than are currently there. And we believe, as we look at some of the traffic studies, that could be possible. We don't know yet. Again, you're right, we don't have all of the details, and until we have those traffic studies, we won't know if this goal was achievable, but we believe that there should be some mitigation that could be done on the current street system.
And my last question, if there were conditions that we put on this, is it appropriate to put the conditions on the rezoning, or is it appropriate to put them on the concept plan?
I think a lot of the traffic conditions may even have to wait till the site plan comes forward. The concept plan is not necessarily a traffic analysis. The concept plan is just that, a concept plan. It's a bubble diagram. We will need that information both for the regulating and site plan, but we're not at it, and obviously they can't get us the traffic studies that we're going to need at this point in time anyway.
And the last question I have is, how many days will it take to build the school, and what is the drop-dead date to start construction?
We need to start our construction the first week of September to be able to open that 2011 date. We've just completed 2 of these buildings. One was done in 10 months, the other was done in 11 and a half months. It's the same floor plan, same building. It's the same building that was West Haven, that is out at West Haven. With regard to the traffic and traffic lanes at the school itself, we have submitted a site plan and construction documents. Planning department and codes have and along with the mayor and his staff have all entered into a meeting of the minds to help move the project through the processes. Because the building has gone through this process with the city of Franklin, because of the fact that we have gotten the state fire marshal's approval. The city has come back to us and said, we'd like to have additional traffic studies. Both parties agree that those traffic studies should be done during the school hours or during the school day, or while schools are in session, not during the summer months. The city has added several locations to us, and we've agreed to do those. But we have looked at Clovercroft itself. Enoch Gerald's here. I'd be glad to get Enoch up here to speak to the traffic directly in front of the school and at Chardonnay, and how the traffic engineers, what they assumed or what percentages they looked at as far as how the school traffic would impact that neighborhood.
And the last question I had was, what was the date of the closing on this property?
I don't have that off the top of my head right now. I just don't recall the date that it was actually closed.
I can't remember the date either.
It's been in this summer, last 45 days.
I want to correct, not correct, but make sure everybody knows, what we agreed to was an expedited process.
Correct.
We didn't agree to anything beyond that, so I just
Right,
wanted to...
it's the process that they're working through with us, which is...
This is going to be a 3-reading ordinance.
Correct.
Yes.
And if we vote no tonight, that's sort of like dead on arrival.
Correct.
Right.
So, right now, just listening to it and realizing that there's things that need to come back to us, more information, some contingency that Ken was talking about. What would be the problem of voting yes tonight for rezoning? Some point before second or third reading, because things may not be kosher, that is not passed. What would that, I mean?
Well, you're exactly right. It's a 3-reading process. We have a similar process for our policies.
So just give us time to get information, because I'm hearing some things as well, that there are a need to sort of clear up some of the concerns, the traffic, wait for the report, that study, and then go forward as if that is going to be done and proper, and we'll go from there. That's just my comment more so, is that because I would be willing to vote yes tonight at our voting session for this to be rezoned. But second or third reading, I won't be able to guarantee anything.
Margaret, yes, I'm sorry.
Catherine, you spoke about the road improvement, that if this were done, that's what we would like to see. Isn't that what you said?
Well, I think that what we would want to see is some mitigation. The level of that mitigation, I can't say at this point in time.
Well, does that mean that it would be improved?
It means that the situations may be improved, whether we're actually talking about the ability to add lanes or to change the basic format of a street. I'm not sure about that, but we could be talking about signaling, we could be talking about lights, we could be talking about left turn lanes, we could be talking about some of that type of mitigation.
Well, is that the city's responsibility, or will that be the school board's responsibility?
That's where the rub
yes.
is. That's where the rub is.
Well, I don't think that's been determined yet.
Right.
The city has, just so everybody knows, we have about $1 million that we have received from the school, what's that?
Adequate
Facilities
tax.
tax. It's sitting in a fund, and we actually have talked several times about what we need to do with that money, or what we can do with that money. The purpose of that is to do something with that money that relates to school. So we have slightly over $1 million in that fund that we could use if we chose to add to the money that the county is saying that they would add to help roads to do that.
Why would we do that with city money?
It's not city money. It's money that was given to us through a facilities tax based upon development that's there specifically for schools. And the way the state law reads, it goes to the city.
You're the decision maker on that money.
Right. And we are the decision maker on that money.
It is city funds from that standpoint, and that you decide, no one decides for you how those dollars get used. The other part we mentioned, the county, in terms of the county schools, and the money that may be available would be targeted from the project itself, but there's also the county, because there's county roads involved in all of this as well. So, there are multiple partners that will play a role in addressing the issues that are identified on the traffic side.
But those funds, Eric, are they limited of where they can be used? I mean, for certain,
You're talking about the facilities tax that funds
can it
that
be
we
used
have.
for anything, or do we have a?
We have, I think, a
clear-cut-
pretty broad range of discretion on how we choose to use that. The city is the decision maker on it, though, at the end of the day. So you're going to have to be comfortable with how you allocate those dollars. But those aren't anything we've ever programmed at this point. They've just sort of accumulated over the years, and it's really something you'll have to look at how you apply those.
Okay, if I may, I'd like to go ahead and now try to have some public comments, and we're going to give 15 minutes. I would like people to alternate, if you could, so that we just don't all stand up in line on one particular side. Please keep your comments to about 2 minutes, and we will go ahead and proceed. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Laurian Scott. I live at 9341 Clovercroft Road, across from the proposed school. I just would like to say very quickly that I would like to thank the county very much for listening to everything that we have said so far and kind of coming up with ways to make it better. However, I would like to say that I feel like they're bullying. everyone by saying that, if you vote yes on rezoning, then we will make concessions with you. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and do whatever we want to do. And I would hope that you would respect their opinion. If they vote no, they would be voting no, that this is obviously a bad place. It wouldn't be saying there's anything against the county. It would just be saying, I'm sorry, it's a really bad place. We're not going to rezone it. But I would hope that you would respect that decision and work with them regardless if you go ahead and build it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, I'm Ed Whitley. I live at 9501 Clovercroft Road. I had several comments, but I would like to bring up one in particular due to the shortage of time. When we talk about mitigating traffic, when we talk about road systems and so forth, I checked the distance from Wilson Pike to this school entrance, 1,580 feet. And that's very important to remember that. I took the length of a car, a 16-foot car, and between cars I put 10 feet, 26 feet total. Car and space, car and space. I divided that into the distance allowed from Wilson Pike to the site at 66 cars. Then I take half the student population, because this is not going to be static. Eventually the school would become full. And let's say half the students are delivered by automobile. 400 students. And say you've got an hour window to access this site against all of the traffic pouring out of Nolensville. You have got 7 cars per minute that's got to be able to cross the oncoming lane, access the school site, offload the students, and then hope to get back out in the congestion going to the west back to Wilson Pike. Because every car that comes down Clovercroft to Wilson Pike has to stop, and there's only one turn to make, because they don't go through the one-lane tunnel, they go north. I cannot simply calculate how 400 cars in an hour with a 66-car limit, start to finish, dead stop, can access this site without creating a total gridlock. You can talk about lights. Traffic and water have two things in common. You can't compact them. And as you stop traffic coming to Wilson Pike, it's just going to continue to back up Clovercroft Road on some of those blind curves. Think about what you're doing here. I think this is a rush to judgment. If this were a poker game, I think the county school board has said we're all in on this. Don't let this happen with a lot more planning and a lot more patience involved. I know we need schools. I feel sorry for the Trinity staff and the students there, but these roads are dead-end roads, whichever way you go. Think about it. Thank you.
Okay, I know which side, does anybody else is anybody in favor of the school would like to say something? Please do. We need to alternate a little bit.
It's the green shirt.
It's the green shirt, we kind of can tell.
As well. I know you can tell what side I'm on. My name is Shanera Williamson. I reside at 5609 Wycliffe Court, and my lovely children do go to Trinity Elementary, as you can see. I would like to ask you to consider voting in favor of this site. And the reason I say so is not just because I'm an obnoxious parent who only thinks about her own children, but it is because I'm a taxpayer and a landowner in Williamson County. And I really do trust Dr. Looney and our school board right now at this point that they have vetted many sites and that they've come to this conclusion. At this time, I think that we need to work together, all of us, as homeowners and as constituents, that we need to really work together. I'm concerned about my property value if my schools are overcrowded. I can understand people who live in the Clovercroft area being very disappointed that something that was zoned for one thing gets rezoned. Yeah, my heart goes out to you as well. I appreciate that. At the same time, I do want to make sure that the quality of education in Williamson County remains at the level that it has been in for so long, and that our property values would remain at the level that they are. In addition, I do want that quality of education to be something that you consider very strongly, and I do thank you for your time.
And would you give your address, please? Just so-
Yes, sir. It is 5609 Wycliffe Court, Wyckliffe, and that's in Franklin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. My name is Dennis Gallagher. I reside at 521 Federal Street, which is located in the Breezeway subdivision. I've been asked to speak on matters related to zoning on behalf of my neighbors. I'd like to ask the board's indulgence, if I may, just to briefly quote from our zoning ordinance from the city of Franklin. The purpose of the low residential R1 district has three purposes, one of which states, provide conditions and standards to help ensure the compatibility of new development with surrounding large lot neighborhoods. And the C1 Civic and Institutional District has four purposes, two of which state, preserve the character and quality of surrounding neighborhoods with development that is compatible in scale, appearance, and other relevant features with surrounding development. Second of which states, as one of the elements stated earlier, mitigate traffic impacts through traffic impact analyses and design to maintain and improve current levels of services. I'd also like to quote briefly from the review that was conducted for the Planning Commission. The staff comments on the concept plan state, the proposed location of the Breezeway Elementary School is problematic in terms of transportation service and safety. Based on the attached analysis, the railroad underpass presents a definite hazard on Wilson Pike between the two Clovercroft Road junctions near the proposed school location. School buses, parents, and employees would be subject to these hazards daily. There's no prospect of improving these transportation conditions, only more traffic to make them more at risk. A statement was made at Thursday's Planning Committee hearing that stated that, basically caveat emptor, buyers of property in the county area adjacent to undeveloped land bear a significant risk associated with their purchase of property near undeveloped land. I strenuously object to that perspective. Homeowners and prospective home buyers rely on the protection provided by the city's zoning ordinance to ensure the proposed development is compatible with existing development. If the applicant's request to rezone is approved despite not meeting the purpose of the C1 district and being entirely incompatible with the R1 district, I question what precedent is established for future rezoning applications and what message is being sent to current homeowners and prospective homebuyers on the integrity of the rezoning process and the appropriate application of the city's zoning ordinance. My neighbors and I respectfully request that you reject the applicant's request to rezone this property. Thank you.
My name is Deanne Smith. I live at 2013 Valley Forge Court in Arrington, Tennessee. Realize I don't reside in Franklin, but I've grown up in Williamson County. I graduated from Brentwood High School. I've gone to public schools here. I chose to move back here as an adult because of Williamson County and the educational system that we have and the integrity we've had as a community. My son attends Trinity Elementary School today. They have to start lunches at 10:30 in the morning sometimes, 10:45. My son's lunch was the last served this last year at 12:45. Half the time, half of the options were no longer available to the children to eat because the ovens cannot cook enough for the children going there. I understand we are here just about whether or not to change the zone. I get that. From a mother's heart, I would like my child to be able to eat. I cannot count on that to happen at Trinity if there are more kids in that school. He does not have the option to attend physical education as often as the other schools do, from my knowledge, because we can't get enough kids through that gym or the cafeteria in a timely fashion. As far as the zone or not, I remember traveling Holly Tree Gap, for those of you who know Brentwood, when it had a sign that said, "Travel at your own risk." And I went to Brentwood High School on a bus down that road every day. Was it the ideal situation? No. But we are a growing county. We're growing because people want to be here because of the education that we have. Brentwood High School and many of our schools are top in the state and in the nation. We need it to stay that way, and it stays that way by tax dollars remaining in Williamson County. They remain here when we take care of our families, when we have a good education for our students. Running them in and out of trailers because we're too concerned about ourselves and individuals and not looking at the bigger picture. Is Clovercroft the perfect situation? Of course it's not. There's never been a perfect situation as long as I've lived here watching the growth of this county. I grew up on Moore's Lane. Where Cool Springs was, it was all dairy farm. It's a mall, and nobody wanted that mall there. But everybody seems to like it now. Well, I sort of don't. I live in Arrington. I moved further away. But my point is this. You're not going to always have the perfect situation. And do I feel bad for the neighborhood in the Breezeway area in Clovercroft? Yes, because guess what? I take my son to school up Wilson Pike from Arrington. I know that one-lane tunnel. I travel it almost every day. But if the county is willing to work with the city of Franklin, and everybody can actually put the children first, put this community first, put Franklin and the county first, and get our egos out of it, and yes, unfortunately, a school possibly going to a neighborhood that they didn't anticipate when they bought the house, I promise you, when my parents moved on Moore's Lane, they didn't think Cool Springs Mall was going in there either. So I ask you to consider the bigger picture when you consider this zoning. It's not going to be perfect for everyone, and sometimes you have to have a road like a Holly Tree Gap short-term to make long-term things work better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Perry. I live at 4047 Clovercroft Road. I happen to also be one of the county commissioners for the 4th District for a few more weeks. So I do represent this area. I'd like to ask you not to approve it tonight, and the main reason is I think the school has bought the property. I think they will use the property over time. There's quite a few pieces of property they've bought and held for a time. And I think eventually this will be a great piece of property once the roads are there, but they're not there today. And to say, well, we'll mitigate the traffic, well, you can put up turn signals, turn lanes, you can put up lights, but the roads are the roads. McEwen is not getting improved anytime soon. The one-lane tunnel's still going to be there. In the short, and the McEwen extension is not being built in any short order. So the roads are the roads. So I think in time, this will be a great piece of property. They should save it for the next school. What I think they need to do is build the other school on the Trinity site. You never heard them once say it was impossible. It was difficult, it was hard, we have to look at this, we have to look at that. It can be done. They said it's a short-term fix, exactly the point. Right now, you're 100 students over capacity. You put a 400-student school there, all of a sudden you've freed up 300 students of space. That gives room for McEwen to grow, to fill in. That doesn't change the zoning immediately. It's a great short-term fix that allows you time to get McEwen fixed, get the McEwen extension built, do the things that needed to be done to make that property work. But it's not today, so I'd ask you to not approve it, and hopefully they'll choose a different site, and they can use that property later. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Michelle Kitchings. I live at 7116 Tullamore Lane. And I first wanted to address Jason's comment that we're 100 students over. I want you to know that the number of students is not the only indicator for overcrowdedness. We will have 46 classrooms in our school. Our gym, one library, one everything can accommodate 35 students. My kids will go to the library every 7 days. My children will go to music every 7 days. My children will go to art every 7 days. But what I really wanted to say was I moved here 3 years ago, and did the old-time Williamson County School Board screw up by not taking away land from McKay's Mill and making a subdivision? Absolutely. Okay? But McKay's Mill is in the city of Franklin. The ancestors of this board screwed up by zoning that to residential without making accommodations for the infrastructure for the education of our children. One of the big things we moved here was for the schools, not for the roads. But who cares who's to blame? We're here right now. Is it viable? That's what we need to know. Is it legal? That's what we need to know. Is it going to be easy? No. But it's the right legal and long-term thing to do, and I say yes.
Brian Seeliger, 9395 Clovercroft Road. I'd like to actually leave these with the aldermen and let them know the real story of the roads that are around the area that I live in. They're treacherous. There's steep drop-offs. And, you know, my problem is when the board talks about participation and they throw in that ultimately this deal is done. That doesn't sound like a desk, a table for participation. And, you know, even last night on Fox 17, I heard Dr. Looney say that it really doesn't matter, I'm paraphrasing, what the residents really want. It doesn't matter about the traffic. There's going to be traffic wherever there's a school. It really doesn't matter about the rezoning. If they approve it or not, we are going to put a school here. And I ask the ladies and the gentlemen that are here with their kids that go to Trinity that at least listen to the people in that area, because our traffic starts at 6 a.m., General Counsel, and it'll now go till 8:30. Yesterday, and I have it on my iPhone, I don't have a fancy computer, but I do have an iPhone, on McEwen Drive at 5:32, there were 56 cars backed up to turn left or right on Wilson Pike. I have 38 of them on my iPhone. And my concern is for those children, and you know, I don't want to, play the violin, but every morning, they're going to struggle to get to school, and this is going to go from, we've got the beautiful school, till thousands of complaints, we can't get our kids to school. If you, and I'll finish quickly, but if you can visualize a funnel and Clovercroft and where this new school is going to be, the funnel starts here, everybody's coming from the infrastructure, going to a place that there is no infrastructure. There won't be for years. And that makes no sense to put a school there and ultimately say, we are putting a school here. Why would you spend the taxpayers' money from a county perspective, $1.3 million of our money without the due diligence? You guys are up here speaking and talking about questions and answers, and more things keep coming up, but yet you've bought a piece of land. I would never buy a piece of land and use taxpayers' money unless I had all of my ducks in a row. But yet, this is ultimately, you're going to put that school there. You've taken 29 homes out of a subdivision. It's, people, let me tell you this. Think of your own subdivision, and okay, the land beside it could be developed like any piece of parcel that's available. This is not land beside a subdivision. This is 29 homes within a subdivision. There was some kind of deal done 45 days ago. Drees was in trouble, needed to sell some land or something, and the property was purchased. But this is 22.7 acres within a subdivision. It's not outside of the subdivision. So now these people in Breezeway that have put their fortune in their homes are going to have a parking lot behind them. And again, I say yes to schools, but no to the location for 280 reasons. There's 280 photos here that tell the story. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Mike Gill. I'm at 9101 Sebastiani Court. I live in the Chardonnay subdivision. I'll just be really brief. We all recognize the need for a new school here, but the concern is the current infrastructure won't support the school as proposed. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-month-old daughter. I think it would be really nice to walk them to school every day. However, there's no way we're going to walk across Wilson Pike in that kind of traffic the way it's currently set. I don't understand why we have to have an August 2011 opening date. Why can't we push it back at least a year, do our due diligence? Let's look at growth reports. Let's look at traffic and safety reports. Let's look at all of this stuff, properly vet. This is a lot of money, and the tax revenue isn't where it used to be. So it's a lot of money to spend only to create more spending through roads to basically get the roads to a level that provides adequate safety for buses, for moms taking their kids to school, and for my daughters crossing the street to school. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to conclude that. If there aren't any more questions, I'd like to try to get a few more items on the work session done before we settle out. We probably don't need to, I don't know, does anyone need to bring up anything on the concept plan at all, or can we go on to the next item? Okay.
Mayor, I'd just like to bring up that the Plan Commission did vote to recommend approval of the concept plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, item number 8 is consideration of the resolution to establish a sustainable building policy for the city of Franklin. You've got a copy of that. We discussed that at the last work session. There were some concerns about it, and there were some modifications made, and Mr. Orr is here to answer any questions that you might have.
It was,
Yes.
the shall is still in there, though.
The shall is in there. They added the paragraph at the end,
Well,
I
I knew
think.
that, but still, shall indicates that it must be done. And we can ask, but this shall does indicate that it must be done. So,
I might make one comment in that regard. The entire LEED process starts day one when you start talking about a building. So if you wait toward the end, you're not going to be a LEED certified building. So I think that probably in this context, shall may be okay, because if you're going to start thinking about a building, you shall consider reviewing and considering whether it is feasible to be a LEED building. You have to do that day one. So if you put it off till later, then I think that's a big problem.
so maybe we should say shall initially pursue with that,
Sure.
and
That would be
that.
fine.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
And that is on the agenda tonight,
Right.
so you might make
That
that
would be a
as
way
a,
to handle that.
Shall initially pursue.
and you could actually make that in the initial motion if you like, without making an amendment to the motion. So whoever wanted to make the motion
Yep.
could say that. Just
Thank you, Mayor.
so everyone knows. This expedites things. Item number 9, consideration of, does anybody have any other questions? Item number 9, consideration of COF contract or grant agreement from National Park Service for battlefield acquisition fudge track. This is just pass through.
There's really not much to this, but I do want to say that we're probably going to enter into an agreement with the Battlefield Trust to make sure they understand that all the things we're required to do in this agreement, they're going to do it. We're just passed through, but we want to make sure that's in writing, that we've agreed to that, and they
That sounds
signed
good.
saying that.
Absolutely. Sounds very good.
You'll be happy to know I was asked to sign out a little while ago. I said, I'm bringing it to the board, see, so it's appropriate we did that. Consideration of memorandum of understanding between the Williams County Board of Education and the City of Franklin regarding Trinity Elementary project. We really don't have anything. No, right.
Not voting on what?
That, the memorandum of
That's the
understanding.
memorandum?
Right.
Oh, that's the thing, yeah.
Okay. Consideration of the bid award to Revere Control Systems of Birmingham, Alabama, in the amount of $14,950 for supply, delivery, and installation of program logic controllers and software for the Water Reclamation Facility Division of the Water Management Department.
Yes, sir. These are means to automatically gauge the amount of, the motors on our blowers in order to introduce oxygen into our wastewater streams and our oxidation ditches. It's a means to help us, to prevent manual operation of these, do it automatically based on pacing, and idea is we'll have more efficient treatment and hopefully better energy usage.
Okay.
Reclaim water as well as effluent.
This is for the entire treatment process at the wastewater treatment facility, so
Waste.
inclusive of both.
And it'll improve the quality of our reclaimed water.
It's part of the whole entire treatment process for our effluent into the Harpeth River as well as our reclaimed water. It's, it's more efficient means to operate our blowers through our oxidation ditches. So as far as, it may be a nominal improvement, but it's hard to say. Really,
Instead of manually tweaking it.
Instead of manually operating our blowers, it's a way to automatically do so, yes.
Okay, I'm going to move item 12 to the next work session. There's a discussion that will take place. We don't have enough time to do
Showed
that.
up now.
Well, we're going to don't have time.
I have one question that needs to be
Yes.
answered when we look at it again, and this is to planning. was this undeveloped parcel designated as unbuildable on the most recent plat? I just wanted answered whenever we talk about it.
I asked a series of questions. We just got an email that outlaid that, and it's going to take a long time to have that discussion, I think.
I
That's
just texted these people, told them to come.
Well, I'm sorry.
I knew we were going to do that.
Item number 13,
I apologize.
discussion of the city administrator's evaluation. I would like to say, just for everybody, and everybody knows that what we did in January and February was to have a one-on-one discussion with Eric, talk about the pros and cons and things he was doing good, things he was doing he could improve in, I wouldn't say bad. I then asked him to kind of summarize what those comments were. We had a chance to read them. We will, if approved, that memorandum, we will vote on that memorandum, and if that's the case, I will then put it in his employment file. So I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions on that. Then you've got a job for another year, I guess.
I appreciate the summary. It was a good
Okay, we're going to adjourn. We will reconvene as quickly as we can, back near 7 as possible.
Eric, we want the list to be longer on the accomplishments next year. You may just have to be more verbose in the script.